Good morning, I'm Gretchen Hall. We're coming to you live this Thursday, the 14th day of August, bringing you Morning Matters because your mornings matter. Let's get to the stories that matter today. The 2025 Barangay and Sangguniang Kabataan elections have been officially postponed to November 2, 2026. President Bongbong Marcos said this move is intended to allow government to focus its resources on the upcoming first-ever parliamentary elections in the Bangsamoro region. The 6.79 trillion 2026 budget proposal is now with Congress, and education remains the top priority with a 928.5 billion budget. The Public Works and Health departments are next in line for funding, even as DPWH faces issues over its flood control projects. And later in the program, Attorney Michael Poa, spokesperson for the Vice President's defense team, will talk to us about the impeachment complaint against Vice President Sara Duterte. Welcome to our program, Morning Matters, where we talk about the issues you need to know for the rest of your day. Now, first on the agenda, President Bongbong Marcos has signed Republic Act number 12232, postponing the 2025 Barangay and Sangguniang Kabataan elections to November 2, 2026. Now, the law also sets a term of barangay and SK officials to 4 years, with the limit of 3 consecutive terms for barangay officials and 1 term for SK officials. Winners of the next elections will assume office on December 1, 2026. The president said the postponement allows the government to focus on preparations for the first ever BARM elections. The House of Representatives has formally received the 6.793 trillion peso proposed budget for 2026. More in this report.
The ball is now in Congress's court after the Department of Budget and Management formally handed over the 6.793 trillion pesos 2026 National Expenditure Program. The Department of Education will once again get the largest share at 928.5 billion pesos. Next is the Department of Public Works and Highways, despite being mired in controversy over allegedly failed flood control projects, followed by the Department of Health. According to the DBM, 274.9 billion pesos is allocated for flood control projects in 2026, 272.2 billion pesos for the DPWH, and 2.593 billion pesos for the MMDA. PhilHealth, which received zero subsidy this year, will get 53.3 billion pesos next year under the DOH budget. However, the Ayuda sa Kapos ang Kita program or AKAP will get zero funding for 2026, despite House Speaker Martin Romualdez's strong push for it last year.
Wala po yung AKAP sa budget ng DSWD for next year. May natitira pa pong pondo for 2025 and like I mentioned a while ago, we receive a total of 10 trillion pesos na proposal from agencies. And given our limited fiscal space, hindi pa po muna natin siya sinama.
House Speaker Romualdez has yet to issue a statement on AKAP's exclusion, but assured that every peso will count.
Kapag malinaw ang proseso, malinaw din ang tiwala. In the coming weeks, we will review every page of the net expenditure program guided by one question. Makakabuti ba ito sa ating mga kababayan? If yes, we will support it.
Meanwhile, the Pantawid Pamilyang Pilipino program or 4Ps will receive 113 billion pesos. Confidential and intelligent funds for 2026 will be reduced to 10.77 billion pesos from 12.1 billion pesos this year. The Office of the President will still get the biggest chunk at 4.5 billion pesos, while the Office of the Vice President will remain without confidential funds.
Senate Finance Committee Chair Sherwin Gatchalian is making one thing clear: no budget insertions without due process. Gatchalian warned such additions could trigger a domino effect, cutting into other programs. He insists that only items proposed by the executive should be included. The chamber also passed a resolution requiring full disclosure of amendment proponents and the funding sources for any of the budget changes. Gatchalian says when every peso is monitored by the public, government spending becomes more responsible.
Habang nagkakaroon ng budget briefing, magkakaroon din tayo ng tawag ko dito, hearing with budget experts and civil society organizations. So marinig naman natin sila kasi nga available yung dokumento pero hindi naman natin sila napapakinggan. So in this case, the hearing is designed for us, no, to listen to them and to get feedbacks. Pwede silang mag-suggest, no? For example, pag nakita nila na masyadong malaki pa rin ang budget sa flood control, kung nakita nila na yung flood control project sa lugar nila hindi maayos, pwede silang mag-comment.
Coming right up, Congress is now investigating the unfinished dredging of rivers and waterways across Metro Manila. Let's discuss that and more with Representative Elijah San Fernando, or Eli San Fernando, when Morning Matters returns. Keep it here on One News. Welcome back. You're still with us here on Morning Matters on One News. The lower house has started its inquiry over unfinished dredging projects in Metro Manila's rivers and waterways. Here is a report.
The House of Representatives held a briefing on infrastructure projects in the country on Wednesday. Bicol Saro Representative Terry Ridon, chair of the House Committee on Public Accounts, said their primary goal is to first identify anomalous flood control projects. Citing a 2023 report, Ridon said that the DPWH failed to implement over 3,000 locally funded projects worth more than 131 billion pesos due to inadequate planning, supervision, and monitoring. He added that 17 foreign-assisted projects worth 84.4 billion pesos also suffered delays and spillages. Caloocan 2nd District Representative Edgar Ariza said corruption allegations have put several flood control projects on hold.
Imagine 1.8 million tons of garbage nandyan po sa mga waterways natin. Yung natural waterways natin is the best flood control master plan. Kailangan lang i-enhance, kailangan palalimin, kailangan luwangan. Ang problema, dahil sa allegations of corruption sa dredging, 10 taon na yatang sinuspinde ng DPWH yung dredging ng mga waterways.
Ariza also stressed that the MMDA has failed to address the growing garbage problem in 17 areas under its watch.
Dysfunctional din po yung Metropolitan Administration. Bakit? We are being managed by 17 independent LGUs. Wala namang magawa yung MMDA. They have a lot of responsibility pero toothless. And they lack authority. Yan po yung problema natin.
At Estero de la Reina in Barangay 290 Binondo, Manila, there's a flood control project completed last year that is not working. The retarding basin, worth over 90 million pesos, was built by St. Timothy Construction Company, a firm linked to Sara Diskaya, Pasig City Mayor Vic Soto's opponent in the midterm elections. Meanwhile, proposed flood control funding for 2026 is set at 274.9 billion pesos. That is nearly 72 billion pesos less than this year's allocation.
The House of Representatives has started its inquiry over unfinished dredging projects in rivers and waterways in Metro Manila. But the President's son, House Majority Leader Sandro Marcos, admits the lower chamber lacks the credibility to probe flood control projects. He said it would be wise and prudent to let the executive take the lead in the investigation.
Why would a body investigate itself? Therefore, I think it will be primarily the prerogative of the executive to be able to identify where these anomalies lie, given the fact that, again, the accused, so to speak, is within the legislature. I'm not going to tell the members what they shouldn't do. I think, alam mo naman, we're all grown men and women here.
And to further discuss the issues surrounding flood control projects, we have with us on the show first-termer, Kamanggagawa Party List Representative Eddie San Fernando. Magandang umaga sa iyo. Welcome to Morning Matters.
Magandang umaga, Ms. Gretchen. Magandang umaga po sa mga tagapakinig natin sa programa.
May Ellie, iba ng frame natin ngayon, hindi na yung TikTok na kung saan ka madalas nakikita at nagbabiral. Ngayon, nandito na tayo sa balita at ikaw ay opisyal na congressman. Congratulations sa iyo. Siguro, let's get first your reaction to the House Majority Leader, Sandro Marcos, saying that the House cannot investigate itself. Do you agree that the House cannot play any role in the investigation into these flood control projects?
I somewhat agree with our Majority Leader, Sandro Marcos, dun sa binanggit niya. Kasi it is well within the power of the executive na gumawa ng aksyon patungkol dito sa binanggit at inamin na mismo ni Pangulong Marcos ng mga palpak na mga flood control projects. After all, he is the president. Nasaan ba yung DPWH? Di ba, nasa executive? So kung talagang seryoso ang Pangulo na may mapanagot sa usapin ng flood control project, he can mobilize the entire instruments of the government para habulin itong mga nai-implicate na mga politiko, mga congressman o senador o kung sino man dito sa mga palpak na flood control projects. Alam mo, Ms. Gretchen, maganda na yung naumpisahan ni Pangulo. In fact, natutuwa kami kasi matagal na naming sinasabi, pangalanan na kasi. At pinangalanan niya nga yung mga kumpanya, yung mga kontraktor. Ang susunod na hakbang, kumbaga kung sa assignment yan, kulang pa yung ginawa ni Pangulong Marcos. Ang dapat na gawin niya, mag-follow through. Total naman, nabanggit na yung mga kumpanya at yung mga kontraktor, ang gawin niya, immobilize niya ngayon yung buong instrumento ng gobyerno para imbestigahan lahat ng mga sangkot dyan sa mga palpak na flood control project. And he can do that even, alam mo Ms. Gretchen, kahit wala yung House of Representatives, if the President is really serious about it, gawin niya, mobilize niya yung iba't ibang ahensya ng gobyerno. We have the COA, we have the Ombudsman, we have the NBI, the DPWH. Anong ginagawa ng DPWH Secretary? That is why hindi ko tinatanggap, Ms. Gretchen, yung sinasabi at nakakapagduda no, na binanggit ni Secretary Bunoan mismo na hindi niya alam yung nangyayari sa mga regions. For a secretary of a national agency to say such statement, anong klaseng secretary ka? Di mo alam nangyayari sa mga regions. So we agree with Majority Leader Sandro Marcos, pero tinutulak din natin na kung seryoso talaga at wag naman gawin tong pang PR lang, wag gawin sana na pang press release lang o pampabango lang. Kung seryoso at kami rin ay kaisa ng Pangulo dyan in finding accountability, gawin niya na, todohan niya na. Wag lang pangalan, wag lang yung doon sa simpleng website. Hindi naman ho trabaho ng mamamayang Pilipino yan maghalongkat-halongkat pa. Kaya na ng gobyerno yan, kaya na ng Pangulo yan. Gawin niya na.
Eddie, alam naman natin na yung problema na ito ay systemic na, no? Naging syndicated na across many different parts of the process, the bidding process, and even the awarding and pati yung pagbibigay ng budget. Do you think a third party would be best to investigate all of these flood control projects?
Yes, Ms. Gretchen, maganda yun. Third party. Sabi nga nila, mahirap nga naman, iimbestigahan namin yung aming sarili, sasabihin ng mamamayang Pilipino. Kayo nga isangkot dyan alam na nga namin kayo na nga sangkot dyan, ba't nyo iimbestigahan sarili nyo? Di biased kayo. So, again, babalik ako dun sa punto ko kanina. Yung third party na yan, even with or without the third party, again, the executive can do something about this. We have the Commission on Audit. We have different government agencies. The only thing that the president needs to do is to follow through and be firm about it. Sabi niya nga, di ba? Walang sasantuhin. Kahit kaibigan, wala dapat tayo santuhin. Very good. Napakagandang statement nun. Gawin
Kahit
niya. May
kamag-anak.
sampulan
Oo.
ka.
Okay.
Yun ang ano. Yun ang gawin ni
tama.
Pangulo.
Parang hinahamon yata, Eli, ang mga, ang mga investigative journalists na siyang mag-imbestiga dito.
Alam mo, Miss Gretchen, hindi ko maintindihan, no? Bakit pinasa bigla sa mga investigative journals? The investigative journals will do their job. But the government, especially the executive, should do its job. Trabaho nila yan, assignment nila yan, tapos papasa nila sa mga investigative journal. Grabe naman yun. Pangulo, you have the entire resources of the government. You have the entire machinery of the government at your disposal. And as the president, the only thing that you need to do, again, is to mobilize them. Alam nyo, Miss Gretchen, nakita na natin yan in the past. Ito mga nakaraang linggo, nakaraang buwan. Kapag ginusto ng gobyerno na may mapanagot, he can mobilize the entire instruments of the government at habulin yung gustong habulin ng gobyerno. Itong flood control project. So, ang ganda na nga ng statement ng Pangulo. Talaga natutuwa kami dyan. Mahiya naman kayo. Dapat may mapanagot. O sige, gawin natin. May sampulan tayo, Mr. President. Wag lang puro PR, wag lang puro sasabihin, ito yung listahan. O, anong gagawin namin ho sa listahan? O ito may website. Anong gagawin ho namin sa website? Pangulo, meron po kayong kapangyarihan. Sampulan nyo na ho. Yan po ang panawagan namin sa inyo. Dapat may mapanagot dito. Alam nyo kasi, Miss Gretchen, mahirap yung sasabihin, these are the top contractors. Okay, alam na namin yan, maganda, top contractors. Sino ngayon yung mga implicated o ini-insinuate ng Pangulo na mga connected na mga politiko, congressman o senador dyan sa mga flood control projects na yan? Umpisahan natin ang investigasyon. At hindi lang simpleng investigasyon, sasabihin, ito, this person and that person is implicated o konektado din sa mga anomalya na mga flood control project. Susunod dyan, panagutin. May kasuhan, may makulong. Yan ang hinahanap ng mamamayang Pilipino at ng mga manggagawa. Hindi na kasi bebenta, Miss Gretchen, yung nag-aasta na matapang, nag-aasta na parang concern pero wala namang action. So ito ang sinasabi natin dito, Miss Gretchen.
Actually, tama ka doon, Kasi pag tinitignan mo yung breakdown, actually, yung breakdown ni Mayor Benjamin Magalong, doon sa kanyang sinasabing kalakaran, ang pinakamalaking may porsyento dyan, yung politiko. At yung contractor nasa 25%, yung politiko nasa 40%. So it remains to be seen if there will be people held accountable, especially up to that level. Tama rin kayo kasi ako nagtataka mismo ano bang pagkakaiba nitong COA sa sumbong sa Pangulo website. I mean, bakit hindi na lang din tignan yung COA? Nandiyan naman kasi yung mga detalye, pati yung mga unit price ng mga materyales na ginagamit sa mga flood control. Pero kayo bilang isang congressman, because you've had your experience in public finance dito sa iyong pagiging researcher for Social Watch Philippines, ano ang inyong proposal para mas maging transparent itong proseso ng bidding, pati na rin ang pag-award ng mga infra contracts?
Ms. Gretchen, isa sa mga final at marami na rin ng mga kapwa kong mambabatas na nag-file nito. Una yun dun sa Open BICAM. Diyan kasi, alam mo, yung mga insertion, yung mga magic, yung mga pagluluto, dagdag bawas sa budget at yung mga pet project ng mga congressman o ng kung sino man, niluluto yan doon sa BICAM kasi ano lang yan secret group yan wala nakakakita dyan. So ang dapat na gawin ay ibukas sa publiko. Kung seryoso talaga tayo sa transparency and accountability, i-livestream, ipakita, isangkot ang mamamayan sa kung papaano ginagawa ang budget at ano yung mga nakapasok doon sa budget kung may insertion man o wala. Pangalawa, Ms. Gretchen, ang dapat na gawin ay alamin kung sino ang lahat ng sangkot na doon sa insertion sa nakaraang budget. Alam naman natin pare-parehas na very problematic ang 2025 budget. At dito pumutok na nga itong pinag-uusapan natin ngayon, flood control project, biglang nabawasan yung mga budget ng mga ahensya ng gobyerno. dapat pangalanan lahat din yun. Alamin lahat yun. I-expose lahat ng yun para consistent tayo doon sa sinasabi na open bycam. Siyempre, yung pinag-uusapan natin yun, prospective. Yung ano yung gagawin natin sa hinaharap. Pero hindi naman natin pwedeng pag-usapan yung mga hakbang natin sa hinaharap nang hindi natin pinag-uusapan yung nakaraan. Kasi hindi natin po pwedeng patakasin yung mga yun. Yun mismo, karamihan dun sa mga yun, ang sangkot dito sa mga palpak na mga
Ang
flood
problema,
control plan.
wala tayong notes or minutes of the meeting of the BICAM and the small committee before
Yes.
it is voted on in the floor. Yun nga yung pinaka problematic dito. We don't know
Yes.
who inserted what at doon nangyayari yung mga horse trading daw. That's according to Congressman Toby Chanco himself. Okay. Ellie, tama ka dyan. You have a very, very interesting story of getting into Congress. Nagsimula ka sa TikTok. Doon mo nga inilaban ng iyong advokasya para sa pagpapantay ng provincial wages, pati na rin ng living wages na maging isa na lang yon, no? Pero I can assume that you here in Congress, you are a progressive, and it would be quite a fight also for your share of the budget. Meron na ba, in the past month or so sa iyong karanasan dyan sa Kongreso, kamusta naman yung paglalaban para sa budget? Ano yung mga siste na maaari mo maibahagi sa amin, mga insights mo into, I guess, fighting for what you need and what you want to achieve as a congressman?
Yung NEP kasi kakapasa lang kahapon at mag-uumpisa na yung budget deliberations. At talagang we will actively participate sa lahat ng budget briefing and deliberation na mangyayari. That's for sure dahil isa rin yan sa sinabi natin prior sa pagkaupo natin dito sa House of Representatives. And then later, we will have our executive meeting with the Committee on Appropriations because I'm part also of the Committee on Appropriations. As a member, part of the minority bloc. So we will push for budget reforms. Yan na nga, nakapag-file na tayo ng mga bills natin and resolutions, particularly reforms about the budget processes. So one thing na pinupush natin, along with other progressive lawmakers from Akbayan, mamamayang liberal, and other lawmakers, yung open bycam nga. Ngayon, patungkol dun sa mga budget ng mga congressman, wala pa namang lumalapag sa sa table ko. Pero alam mo, Miss Gretchen, gaya ng sinasabi ko paulit-ulit sa Facebook, sa TikTok, we will be transparent sa aming mga constituent. Kung ano man ang pumapasok at lumalabas sa pondo ng Kamanggagawa Party List, we will report that to the public just to prove a point. Dapat may proof of concept na pwede pala na umupo ka sa Kongreso o meron kang pwesto sa Kongreso and yet you are transparent. In fact, I have announced nga, uumpisahan ko doon sa congressional salary ko Sabi nila, baka PR lang yan, Eli, baka gimmick lang yan. No. On the 15th, magmi-meeting na nga kami ng mga manggagawa and I will report it to the public. Alam mo yung TikTok, Facebook, and other social media platforms, tool yan for transparency, makita ka ng mamamayan, makita ka ng mga constituents mo. And that is what I am exactly using and utilizing na ipakita sa mamamayan, ito ho ang ginagawa ko bilang inyong kinatawan. After all, kayo naglagay sa akin dito, kayo nagpapasahod sa akin, edi i-report ko sa inyo. So we need a proof of concept. We need to walk the talk. Problema kasi, pagsasabihin natin, we are all crying for transparency, accountability, dapat may mapanagot. Tapos pag tinanong, kayo ba transparent, kayo ba accountable? Yan ang malaking problema. So we will walk the talk. At anuman ang pumasok, lumabas sa opisina ng Kamanggagawa Party List, we will report that. Because again, we owe it to the people, the Filipino people, who put us in the seat of power. Karapatan ng mamamayan yan na malaman. Ano ang nangyayari sa opisina mo? Anong ginagawa mo dyan? May kalokohan ka bang ginagawa? I-report mo sa mamamayan. Yun lang yun, Miss Gretchen.
Baka kaya wala pa lumalapag na budget sa table mo.
Exactly. Kaya ayaw siguro kasi ganito ka-open, Miss Gretchen eh. But that's fine, that's okay.
Wala pa bumubulong sa'yo dyan, Congressman, na ganito para pakakuha ka ng budget, para may matulungan ka, o meron kang alokasyon sa ayuda. Wala pang ganon. Wala bang mga bumubulong dyan sa'yo?
Well, may mga well-meaning friends na nagsasabi, maghinahinay ka naman, Eli. Alam mo, Miss Gretchen, magbe-behave ako accordingly. Kumbaga, I will act accordingly. Kung nakikita kong may mali, yan yun naman ako nakilala sa TikTok, sa Facebook. Kung may nakikita kong dapat sabihin, sasabihin ko. Kasi wala naman dapat pumigil. Again, kung nasa katwiran at nasa tama naman yung binabanggit at sinasabi natin, bakit ako matatakot? Pumasok ako sa Kongreso na manggagawa pa rin ako hanggang ngayon. Wala kaming budget, di kami mayaman, di kami pinabackupan ng malalaking politiko at saka mga negosyante. Anong ikakatakot namin na mawawala? Wala na po mawawala sa amin eh. So we are there because the workers put us in Congress and therefore we will do our job. Kaya nga ang sarap sa feeling, Miss Gretchen, sobrang sarap sa feeling na nagagawa namin yung advokasya namin na hindi namin iniisip, ay teka, baka hindi po pwede itong ginagawa natin. Siyempre, we will act with decorum according to the rules of the House of Representatives. We will act accordingly. But then again, masarap sa feeling na nasasabi ko yung dapat sabihin ko, walang takot na naipaglalaban yung gusto ko ipaglaban kasi walang strings attached. May budget o wala, okay lang yan, walang problema.
Eli, your party list finished 29th out of 52 party lists that won. Mataas ang pwesto ng kamanggagawa with 382,000 votes. What do you think worked for you? I mean, is it really, I mean, just TikTok that was your main platform? Anong mga strategiya, maaari mong ibahagi sa mga katulad mong progresibo na gustong tumakbo sa hinaharap?
Naging malaking factor talaga, Miss Gretchen, yung social media. Lagi namin binabanggit, we don't have the traditional machinery, as we know. Leaflets, radio, TV, advertisements, at maraming iba pa. Wala kami lahat niyan. In the absence of that, ang ginawa namin, number one, we utilize social media. Pinakita namin sino ang kamanggagawa, ano ang advokasya ng kamanggagawa, and a very consistent message. Ang message namin is about workers' rights, buwagin ang provincial rate, nothing more, nothing less, tungkol lang sa mga manggagawa. Second, hindi lang naman sapat na social media lang. Tiniyak namin din na namomobilize yung mga tao sa ground. We also have trade unions, federations, labor organizations, community organizations. So, merong social media efforts, sinasabayan namin ng paggalaw sa baba. Nag-house-to-house campaign, tao sa campaign, nakikipag-usap. Ako mismo, kahit mag-isa lang, talaga nakikipag-usap sa mga tao. So, salubungan yan, social media and ground campaign. Kasi hindi naman po pwedeng puro social media. Mas maraming masikat sa akin, Miss Gretchen. At tumakbo rin sa politika, pero they failed to win a seat. Kaya ang isang mahalagang component dyan, mapakilos mo yung mga tao. Hindi sapat na nakikita ka lang nila online. Hindi sapat na nakikita ka lang nila sa TikTok, sa Facebook o kung saan man. Dapat makita ka nila aktwal. At maramdaman nila, makita nila na seryoso ka dun sa pinaglalaban mo. So, posible pala, Miss Gretchen. Yun ang mensahe ng kamanggagawa. And everyone is surprised. Posible pala na manalo, even with the absence of resources and traditional support.
Congressman, you will be judged though by your main advocacy, which was to get rid of provincial wages and to have a living wage for all workers in the Philippines. How do you plan to convince the other lawmakers to get that passed? Because it has always been the argument na ang minimum wage workers naman sa Pilipinas ay they don't make up majority of the workers. Kokonti lang sila, no? Ilang million lang yan. I'm not sure about the exact number. Is it 1 million? Is it 5 million? Pero they don't make up majority. Mas marami pa rin ang MSMEs o yung may kanilang sariling negosyo. Mga tricycle driver na may sariling pasada, mga sari-sari store owner na may sariling tindahan. And they are the ones employing these minimum wage earners. So, syempre, it is a balancing of interest. So,
Yeah.
kung kanino mo ba, I mean, paano mo, how do you keep the economy going and alive while still sustaining the business and being fair to your employees? So, how do
Yeah.
you plan to do the convincing in actually getting that law passed?
Yeah. For the arguments, especially, ang lagi naman nagbabanggit niyan, yung Employers Confederation of the Philippines, sinabayan pa ng Philippine Retailers Association. We have repeatedly debunked all their arguments that this will make the businesses close down, especially the micro and small enterprises. Di naman apektado yan. Ang pinatutungkulan natin, yung mga mas malalaking korporasyon, top 1,000 corporations. So, doon naman sa tungkol sa pag tinaas ang sahod ng mga manggagawa, it will cause inflation and unemployment. Debunked na rin yan according to data. So paulit-ulit na lang yung argument nila at paulit-ulit na din namin na dinidebunk yan. Siguro ang mas pagtuunang pansin namin is how are we going to convince our fellow lawmakers to support our bill. In my privilege speech last time, sinabi ko, we are extending our hand of friendship to everyone. Big sabihin, regardless of party affiliation, kahit sino ka man, we are willing to work with them. Kaibigan niyo ho ang Kamanggagawa Party List. I'm more than willing and more than happy to explain the merits of our bills. Ano yung mga factual arguments, ano yung mga counter arguments din na binabanggit dun sa aming mga panukalang batas. Kakausapin ho namin sila, makikipag-usap kami sa kanila, makikipagkaibigan. Kung kailangan umabot sa debate, makikipagdebate kami sa kanila. May it be in the committee or in the plenary. Ipapakita po namin kasi na posible itong gawin. Because all the data show na kaya itong gawin. At patungkol doon sa ginagamit, kasi hindi naman mutually exclusive, yung si informal workers at si formal economy. There are different interventions to address their needs and particular interests, may it be in the informal or the formal economy. Now, we are addressing the needs of the minimum wage earners in the formal economy, sa pribadong sektor. So may particular intervention for that. Huwag gamitin na bala yung nandun sa informal economy because we are also finding ways. It is the responsibility of the House of Representatives and us, lawmakers, to find ways and interventions so as to improve the lives, the standard of living of both workers in the formal and the informal economy. Pero pagdating dito sa mga minimum wage earners, pagdating dito sa provincial wages, malakas ang aming argumento. We say with a resounding yes, kaya po yan, posible po yan. Ang kailangan na lang ho ay political will ng mga mambabatas. And that is why I encourage especially our representatives from districts in the provinces to support these members. Kasi ang makikinabang ho dyan, yung mga constituents din nila.
Congressman
Maalala
Eli,
sana
kung
ang
titignan mo nung
Yes.
kung titignan mo nung past Congress, ito ay pumasa naman sa House na yung legislated
Yes.
wage hike. Pumasa rin ito sa Senado na naipit ito kay Presidente na hindi niya ata pinagdesisyonan itong proposed 200 pesos increase in daily minimum wage. Kaya ito ay lumipas na. Or hindi niya, wait lang, we'll carefully study which was the last update in June 5. And yung huling wage hike or legislated wage hike was in 1989 pa.
Yes.
So medyo mahirap pero you got your work cut out for you, but it seems you're very clear in what you want to achieve, and that has gotten you a seat in Congress. Again, congratulations and thank you so much for joining us today to weigh in on the latest in the Congress. Maraming salamat, Kamanggagawa Party List Representative Eli San Fernando.
Salamat.
Well, up next, motions for consideration are piling up at the Supreme Court after it ruled the impeachment articles against Vice President Sara Duterte unconstitutional. How does her legal team plan to counter this? Stay tuned because Attorney Michael Poa, spokesperson for VP Duterte's defense team, is here to answer those questions. Morning Matters will be back after a quick break. Good morning, I'm Gretchen Juan here on Morning Matters. We talk about the most pressing issues and give you the context behind the headlines. House prosecution is not backing down even after the Supreme Court declared Vice President Sara Duterte's impeachment case unconstitutional. In an interview here on Morning Matters, spokesperson attorney Antonio Bucoy said the decision contained factual and legal errors. He insisted that the House acted on all complaints within the constitutional period and followed the impeachment doctrines in effect at the time. Bucoy also criticized the Supreme Court for imposing new requirements not found in the Constitution, which he warns could make future impeachments nearly impossible. If their motion for reconsideration is denied, the House plans to refile the case in February of next year under the new guidelines. And joining us now for the other side of this issue, we have the spokesperson for the Vice President. We have Attorney Michael Poa joining us to give the side of the defense. Magandang umaga sa iyo. Welcome to Morning Matters.
Magandang umaga, Ms. Gretchen, and magandang umaga sa lahat ng mga nanonood sa atin. Thank you for having us.
Okay, the last we know from the Vice President's team is that they were asked by the Supreme Court to respond to the MR, to the motion for reconsideration. Anong mga hiningi ng mga detalye nitong Supreme Court as a response?
Nothing specific naman.
Okay.
It's usual, no, na pag may motion for reconsideration, the other party is asked to comment. So sa atin, what we will be doing is, and with what we are already doing, hinihimay lang natin yung mga argumento na nilatag ng House of Representatives through the Office of the Solicitor General doon sa kanilang motion for reconsideration. And of course, we will respond to each and every argument that they proposed there.
At isa nga sa mga argumento na yan ay meron daw factual errors dito sa desisyon ng Korte Suprema. Let me cite one, ABS-CBN News clarifying through a statement that they never said in their article that there was no plenary vote before this was passed on to the Senate. Sinabi nila na meron nga yan, that happened in the records. Do you expect the Supreme Court to have some changes in its decision because of those factual errors?
Well, number one, when it comes to those alleged factual errors, allegation pa lang yan, no? So they have to prove that in fact there were factual errors. Our position is, of course, wala, no? But I cannot go into detail because that will be part and parcel of our comment. Pangalawa, even if there were factual errors, ang isang magandang elemento pa dyan is, would those factual errors actually affect the decision? Diba? Kasi hindi lang naman porket may error automatically nire-reverse mo ng decision. It depends if that factual error is significant enough that it would have affected the decision. So yun yung mga bagay na ilalagay namin sa comment namin, yung mga detalye on whether or not there was in fact or there were in fact factual errors. At tingnan natin kung ano yung magiging tingin or appreciation ng Supreme Court.
Okay, then Attorney Bucoy said that the way that this impeachment complaint was lodged was according to jurisprudence, the Francisco and Gutierrez cases, kung saan parang yung deemed initiated ang isang impeachment claim kapag na-refer na ito sa Committee on Justice. And this ruling actually put in additional requirements to meet the declaration of an impeachment complaint being initiated as legal. At sabi din niya na dapat kung mayroon mang dinagdag ng mga requirement, dapat prospective ito at hindi ito retroactive. What would you say to that?
Let me premise my response by saying that, of course, we respect Attorney Bucoy and the position of the House of Representatives. Siyempre, yan yung position nila. No? And tayo naman also, we have to understand, we're advocating also naman for the petitioner, which is the Vice President. So, obviously and naturally, our position will run contrary to their position. So sa atin, hindi natin nakikita na may departure from Francisco and Gutierrez. In fact, our petition, when we filed it, if you read it, is actually hinged also on Francisco and Gutierrez. So, syempre, ang position natin is wala tayong nakikitang departure on that. even Attorney Francisco himself came out saying that he felt na wala namang departure. But these are things, again, it's so difficult for us to directly answer your question with the details because then we will preempt our comment. No? But in gist, wala kaming nakikitang pagkakaiba in our position is that the ruling came out of an analysis of the Constitution, the rules of the House itself, and as well as the jurisprudence, which includes Francisco and Gutierrez.
Well, to the Vice President's team's defense, do you think that she was not given due process here, the opportunity to know what she was being accused of prior to this being transmitted to the Senate? Do you agree with that observation?
Well, of course, due process kasi is innate in every stage of any proceeding. No? So, and that was the finding of the Supreme Court. And sa atin...
Kinulang ba talaga?
Well, yan ang finding ng Supreme Court, so I don't even want to go into that. But sa atin, oo, dapat naman siguro nabigyan siya ng notice, nabigyan siya ng panahon mag-respond. But ang main point kasi namin dito, when you talk about due process, is the grave abuse of discretion on the part of the House. No? So ano yung sinasabi namin dun sa aming petition? Ang tinutukoy namin is yung pag-freeze nung mga first 3 complaints na hindi kaagad-agad na transmit sa ating speaker kung saan mag-run na kaagad yung period. You know, all those things come into play, all those things come into the due process requirement, and yun ang talagang contention natin sa ating petition na nagkaroon ng grave abuse of discretion on the part of the initiation of the impeachment complaints. At yun naman yung dinulong natin sa Korte Suprema.
But in principle, isn't the House allowed to reconcile the different versions of the complaints to come up with one credible complaint?
Well, if that is the case, according to the decision, kasi it wasn't a reconciliation. It was a totally different complaint from the first 3. So, kasi iba rin talaga yung mode. No? The first mode was the usual filing of the complaint, endorsement, and then as the Constitution says, it has to be referred to a committee.
Kumbaga parang prioritize itong nagkaroon na ng signature, yung fast track lane.
I think nakita naman natin yun. But let's just stick with the decision siguro muna. Because obviously what I say and what we'll say will always be opposing positions.
Correct.
And that's normal. That's natural. So, but ang sinasabi natin dito is, nakita na rin naman ng Supreme Court yon na iba talaga. It wasn't parang kinombine mo lang yung first 3 tapos nagkaroon ka ng fourth. The Supreme Court was very clear in its decision na ibang mode totally yung fourth impeachment complaint.
Pero ngayon, nire-require na mag-present ng evidence, tama? I mean, kasama ng impeachment complaint,
Yes.
dapat kasama na rin yung full scope of evidence.
Well, hindi naman full scope of evidence, I believe. Evidence, kasi ang pinaka-importante nating pag-usapan dito, Gretchen, is the fact that the complaint must be verified. Diba? At pag sinabi mong it must be verified, doon sa verification, sasabihin ng kung sino man ang nagpe-verify na unang-una, nabasa niya yung complaint at base sa allegations at kung ano man ang mga supporting evidence, he or she feels strongly na dapat magkaroon ng may liability yung impeachable officer. So, doon pumapasok yung evidence. Kasi kung yung naka-attach naman ay hindi naman nagpapakita na kung sakaling totoo lahat ng ito, dapat ma-impeach yung officer na yon. Paano mo ngayon ma-determine, paano mo ngayon ma-verify na based on your appreciation of the complaint, the person must be impeached. Kaya mo gusto i-file itong complaint na to. So, doon naman nanggagaling yung Supreme Court. So, we're not saying like the full-blown, full scope of evidence.
Pero
We're
bakit
just saying
lang?
enough, sufficient evidence to form a belief, no? Na may pinanggagalingan at dapat ngang kung totoo nga ang naging allegation based on evidence, dapat kang ma-impeach ang
And we
officer.
had actually several hearings to talk about the confidential funds of the Vice President, kung saan lumabas yung mga resibo na
Yes.
pinagpapaliwanag nga kung bakit saan nanggaling si Mary Grace Piatos at Chippy at lahat-lahat pa. Hindi ba sapat na yun na ebidensya to at least get this going?
Well,
And the other argument is, if hiningi mo lahat ng ebidensya or as much as possible to disclose kung ano yung mga evidence, ay baka ma-jeopardize naman ang security nung mga witnesses.
Exactly. But kasi we have 7 articles. No? It's not just one article. There are 7 articles in the articles of impeachment. At kung ang naka-attach ay just acknowledgement receipts, I guess, yan nga ay, syempre ang posisyon namin, it's not sufficient. Syempre ang posisyon ng kabila, it's sufficient. So that's why, ang sinasabi ko, yung mga ganitong pag-uusap, kailangan talaga meron tayong judge o meron tayong katulad ito sa Korte Suprema na magsasabi kung tama na ba yun, kung sufficient na ba yun. Kasi syempre sa atin, we will say it's insufficient. Sa kabila, they will say it's sufficient. Of course, to us, just attaching those things, it's quite a big leap. No? Quite a big leap because you're saying just because may ganito, kinuha na yung pera, kinurap na yung pera, na hindi na napunta
But
sa tamang
aren't those things
yung
supposed to
pera.
be discussed in the context of a trial? I mean, yung sufficiency of evidence, yung weight of the evidence.
Exactly. But that's why when we talk about victory or vindication, we say wala pa yan kasi nasa merits yan. No? What we're talking about here is the initiation process. The process by which you initiate an impeachment.
Correct.
At yun lang naman ang naging discussion sa Supreme Court. Ang naging discussion lang sa Supreme Court is paano ba yung ang ginawang isiniwang proseso ayon ba sa saligang ayon ba sa ating saligang batas yun. Yung on the evidence, hindi naman sinasabi ng Supreme Court na dapat full-blown yung evidence mo. Ang sinasabi lang doon na parte doon sa evidence is part and parcel of that verification requirement.
So, nung hinain itong impeachment complaint sa inyo, walang kasamang naka-attach na evidence?
Ang naka-attach ay yung mga sinasabi, yung mga nabanggit
yung
mo lang,
resibo lang.
na mga acknowledgement receipts ng PSA. But as to all others, as far as I know, dahil yung sa kopya namin, wala. But again, let's not, I hope we don't dwell on that because like you said, yung weight or probative value ng mga ebidensya is really best threshed out in trial. Ang nangyari lang dito is really, it's on the initiation of the impeachment complaint. So I don't really want to come out and say
Correct.
kulang ang ebidensya nila and things like that.
Attorney Bukoy said that there are 5 MRs that have been filed before the Supreme Court at lahat itong mga petitioner nung mga impeachment complaints ay nagkasundo na mag-file nitong MR. Magkaparang lahat sila nandyan. So we will wait for that because we don't want to preempt it. No? But I want to talk about the notices of disallowance by the COA.
Yes.
Has this already been answered?
Yes, the notices of this, there's only one notice of disallowance issued by COA against the Office of Vice President. It is now undergoing review. No? Meron kaming inihain na petition for review before the commission proper or of the Commission on Audit. Yan kasi yung proseso. Once there is a notice of disallowance, ang remedy, ang legal remedy dyan is iakyat yan sa Commission proper via petition for review. Yan ay pending pa sa ngayon.
So it hasn't been cleared yet.
Hasn't
on
been
the
cleared.
issue of the 125 million confidential funds.
Yes, although it wasn't the entire amount kasi that was disallowed. It was around 73
plus,
million
70 mil,
that was disallowed. So yan yung amount na since yan yung amount ng subject of disallowance, yan yung subject rin ng ating petition for review.
Okay. But could you help us understand though? I mean, itong issue din sa safe houses, 16 million was spent on 34 safe houses for 11 days in the last 11 days of 2022. Saan nga ba ginamit yun?
It's very difficult to answer that question at this point. It's not that we don't have an answer, no, Gretchen, but because that it will also come into play if ever man magkaroon ng impeachment trial. That will also come into play dito sa petition for review namin. So I hope you can be patient with me because I really cannot answer that question at this point. It will really preempt and it will just open a can of worms without wanting to address it now. Kasi meron tayong sagot dyan, obviously, but that is best answered in the proper forum, which, again, is the impeachment trial or COA or even in the ombudsman case. No? As you know, there is an ombudsman case that is ongoing right now. So, hindi ko talaga masasagot yan. Again, I apologize to you and to your viewers.
It's okay. I know you're just doing your job. And isasama ko na rin itong tanong ko. Habang nandito tayo. In a hearing, you acknowledged that you received an envelope from the Vice President, and she was known for giving out envelopes with cash. I mean, una-una, para saan itong mga ano na to? Mga
No,
envelopes na to?
sorry, but I'll correct you there. Actually, didn't receive any envelopes. No? In the hearing, when they asked me if I received it, I said no. What I only got, if any, was reimbursements. Because at that time, I was a spokesperson of the DepEd. And as you know, with my engagement with media, for example, hindi may iwasan that sometimes kailangan mong maglabas ng konti. So those were the only instances. But as to yung mga envelopes o white envelopes na nabanggit dun sa hearing, I categorically said that wala akong natanggap na ganyan. It must be maybe
okay, yes. Actually, I got this from an article. No? So maybe you were misquoted. But several DepEd officials have admitted to receiving envelopes containing 25,000 peso monthly allowance, reportedly from the Vice President, then DepEd Secretary.
Again, those were the claims in the committee hearings. Right now, we cannot respond to that only because also that is part of the articles of impeachment under Article 3, I believe. No? So I'm sure you'd understand na hindi namin sasagutin dito. And that's also the reason why hirap na hirap ako. And I always tell the host, pasensya ka na kasi pagdating sa merits, we cannot preempt our arguments, diba? Because we have to defend the rights of our client the best way we can.
Correct.
And in preempting that, medyo baka ma-trial by publicity tayo dito.
Sige. So you are spokesperson of the defense team, but not anymore of the Vice President's office?
Yes, wala na. I started as spokesperson of DepEd.
Yes.
And then I was moved to OVP, but only on a contractual consultancy basis, no? As their spokesperson. But I think sometime it was October, when I was no longer engaged. No? Hindi na namin, pinre-terminate na namin yung consultancy contract ko doon. And right now I'm in private practice and just a lawyer of the Vice President.
Of now focusing on the impeachment.
Focusing on impeachment, and for myself, I'm also her lawyer for her other cases.
Okay.
As you know, may DOJ case siya, yung grave threat and inciting to sedition was filed. So I'm lawyering for her there. Also with the ombudsman, ombudsman cases, and also yung PNP, but the PNP one na dismissed na, no? Yung sa City Prosecutor of Quezon City naman for direct assault, yung nangyaring insidente sa Veterans Memorial. So, yung mga ganung bagay. So, right now, I'm really just a private practitioner.
And how are you preparing for February 6, no? For the date when a new impeachment complaint could be filed? Sinabi na ng mga House prosecutors na magkakaroon, at ang mangyayari dyan, mag-uunahan. Ano? Kasi uunahan ng credible complaint. And how is your team preparing for that?
We're just continuing what we have been doing since February, kasi simula naman nang naihain itong impeachment complaint. While we filed a petition before the Supreme Court, as you know, hindi naman natin, we were optimistic, but hindi pa rin naman natin sigurado kung ano yung magiging desisyon. So we were preparing since February. We were ready to go to trial. As you also know, the Vice President always said that she was ready to go to trial. So ngayon, in preparation for Feb 6, 2026, tuloy-tuloy lang, nakikita pa rin kami ng defense team. In fact, ngayon, inuuna muna namin yung comment namin dito sa motion for reconsideration. And then, tuloy-tuloy lang ang preparation.
Naipasa na ba?
Hindi pa.
Hindi pa.
We received formal notice of the order of the Supreme Court 2 days ago.
Okay.
So, we technically have 10 days from that point to file. We have been we have started drafting it na. So, may mga fine-tuning lang na ginagawa. So, definitely we will submit that comment within the period provided.
Pero bakit nga ba 16 lawyers ang kinuha ng Vice Presidente?
Dapat ma-explain siguro natin yun. Kasi, parang when it's...
Iba-iba ang ang impression nun 16
lawyers, because if you really look at the composition, it's part of it is a whole firm, no? Si Fortune Narvasa and Salazar with attorney Sig Fortune, sila attorney Sison, attorney Narvasa, they're part of a firm. So most of these lawyers are Fortune Narvasa Salazar lawyers.
Okay.
Because naturally, kahit naman sa atin, when we have clients, hindi lang naman isang abogado mula sa firm ang nagtatrabaho. It's a whole team. So yun yung team. And then aside from Fortune Narvasa Salazar, there are really just 4 other lawyers that are not part of the firm that are part of the impeachment team.
Okay.
So 16 kami, but mostly ang karamihan yan is because of the team coming from Fortune Narvasa Salazar.
And I guess the last question, people have been looking for the Vice President, always asking where she is. Tell us about her state of life now, na pabalik-balik siya sa Hague, binibisita niya yung Pangulo. Paano pa siya nagkakaroon ng, kumusta ang schedule niya? Paano niya binabalanse itong...
Hindi na kasi ako spokesperson, di ba, ng
To
ating
your
vice-presidente.
knowledge. To your knowledge.
Napakahirap sagutin yan at hindi siguro inappropriate for me to answer. But just to answer that question, maybe from the legal team's point of view na lang, sinasabi kasi parang maalis siya parate, baka hindi nagaganap pa ng trabaho niya. But pagdating sa legal team, never kami nagkaroon ng problema. Kasi whether we need a meeting na virtual or in-person, she always makes the time. So never kami nagkaroon ng problema. There's always constant communication with her, be it through text or yun nga, nagkakaroon kami ng mga in-person meetings. So from our perspective, whether she's here or whether she's elsewhere, hindi naman tumitigil yung trabaho. Of course, I cannot speak for operations of OVP anymore or other aspects of her duties. But pagdating sa defense team, never kami nagkaroon ng issue. Never namin sinabi na, wala siya, so paano to? No, because even if whether she's abroad or here, when we need to talk to her, we get to talk to her. So, and she's very hands-on, actually. Every step of the way, pagdating sa strategy ng defense team, she's consulted and we get quick responses. And she's very decisive.
And how often is she in The Hague?
I wouldn't know I don't know her schedule. No? We just find out. Nagsasabi naman siya if she'll be out so that if there's anything that needs to be signed, it's always done. And in fact, the Vice President, and this is this is something siguro that I can share out of my personal experience. Hindi siya yung tipo na you always have to adjust to her schedule. If she wants a meeting, nagtatanong pa yan sa amin, and even sa akin personally, if I'm free on so-and-so date. At pag hindi ako libre because I have other clients that I have to attend to, siya pa yung nag-a-adjust sa schedule. So it really hasn't been that difficult for us. So again, ang hirap magsalita for that aspect, yung pinanggagalingan ng tanong mo, because that really is on the OVP and they have their own spokesperson now. But on
Nasanay lang kami, no, you representing the Vice President on all sides, from all sides.
I understand.
But thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Gretchen, and really enjoyed our conversation. And thank you for having me on the show. This is my first time on your show.
But sa big story, nakita na rin tayo.
Thank you.
We have a spokesperson for Vice President Sara Duterte's defense team, Attorney Michael Poa. Thank you again for your time today. And that wraps up today's episode of Morning Matters. We hope we've given you the right start to your morning. Let's go ahead and make the day matter. My name is Gretchen Hall. We are One News, all sides, all the time.